We live in a world obsessed with tomorrow. From weather forecasts to stock market predictions, from urban planning to space exploration, our minds are constantly projecting, calculating, inventing the future. But what if, for millennia, humanity simply didn't? What if, for most of our existence, the very concept of a future as we understand it, a distinct, improving, linear progression, was utterly alien? Imagine a world where time wasn't a river flowing ever onward, but a vast, unchanging ocean, its tides eternally rising and falling. A world where the most profound wisdom wasn't about what lay ahead, but about recognizing the patterns that always returned. This was the eternal return, the bedrock of ancient thought, born directly from the soil. Picture the dawn of agriculture, the relentless toil, the hopeful scattering of seeds into the freshly tilled earth. A farmer's future wasn't about innovation, but fidelity. Fidelity to the proven rhythms. The rains would come, or they wouldn't. The sun would shine, or the clouds would gather. Their lives were an intricate dance with forces they could influence, but never truly command. Days bled into weeks, weeks into months, marked not by clocks or calendars, but by the lengthening shadows, the swelling grain. The green shoots emerged, vulnerable yet persistent. Every year the same anxious watch, the same prayers, the same patient waiting for the earth to yield its bounty once more. There was no new normal to anticipate, only the old normal to embrace again. Then the glorious, back-breaking harvest. Scythes flashing, grain stacked high, the air thick with dust and triumph. Feasts were held not for progress, but for survival. A celebration that the cycle had once again completed its sacred turn. The seeds of this year's harvest would become next year's hope, perpetually renewing, perpetually the same. Beyond the fields, life mirrored the cosmic clock. Solstices and equinoxes weren't just astronomical markers. They were vital religious festivals, communal rituals designed to harmonize human existence with the turning heavens. The sun died and was reborn. The moon waxed and waned. The stars spun in their predictable dance. Everything repeated. Think of the profound difference this made. Planning for a radically different tomorrow would have been, frankly, absurd. Why invent a future when the wisdom of your ancestors, passed down through generations, taught you everything you needed to know about the inevitable return of things? Change, when it happened, was often perceived as a breakdown in the natural order, not an advancement.
The architects of Stonehenge, the scribes of ancient Egypt, the farmers of Mesopotamia, they didn't ask, what will the future bring? They asked, how do we align ourselves with what always has been and always will be? Their genius lay in mastering the eternal present, not in forging a path to an unknown tomorrow. It's a way of seeing the world so utterly foreign to us, it almost defies belief. They didn't invent the future. They lived in a world where it wasn't even needed.
But if the eternal return was the bedrock, how could such a worldview ever shift? What force, what idea was potent enough to shatter the cosmic clock of endless cycles, to replace the comfort of repetition with the daunting prospect of an unknown yet faded tomorrow? The answer, shockingly, emerged not from the practicalities of the soil, but from the pronouncements of prophets and the whispers of the divine. Suddenly, time wasn't a vast, unchanging ocean. It was a river, and it had a destination. Imagine the radical departure. Ancient religious texts began to tell a story with a distinct beginning, a purposeful unfolding, and a singular ultimate end. This wasn't about aligning with what always was. It was about preparing for what was to come. One of the earliest glimpses of this linearity of time can be found in the teachings of ancient Zoroastrianism, with its cosmic struggle between Asha, truth or order, and Druj, falsehood or disorder. The world was not static, it was a battleground, moving inexorably towards a final triumphant renovation, a fashokareti, where good would utterly vanquish evil. This was the first blueprint for universal history imbued with moral purpose, culminating in a definitive victory. Then came the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Here the linearity of time became not just a concept, but the very scaffolding of existence.
A divine covenant with a chosen people, a promised land, a Messiah whose arrival would fundamentally alter the world, a judgment day, an afterlife where deeds accumulated across an entire lifetime determined an eternal fate. Every prayer, every sacrifice, every moral choice wasn't just a repetition of ancestral custom. It was a step on a pilgrimage towards a predestined future. Think of the sheer, astonishing audacity of this idea. It utterly rewrote humanity's place in the cosmos. No longer were humans merely participants in an endless cosmic dance. They were actors in a grand drama, each playing a role in a divinely authored script. History became salvation history, imbued with meaning, moving towards a climactic revelation. This shift didn't just provide a future, it demanded one. Messianic expectations, the yearning for a world perfected, for justice rendered, for a paradise regained, these weren't merely hopes, but predictions. The future wasn't just possible, it was inevitable. And with that inevitability came an urgency, a responsibility to prepare. Time transformed from a circle into an arrow, hurtling towards a target. Every event, every famine, every triumph, every prophecy fulfilled or awaited became a marker on this singular, irreversible path. The past was prologue, the present was probation, and the future was ultimate destiny. And so, through the sacred scrolls and the fervent belief in a divine plan, humanity began to do something truly extraordinary. In a bewildered, astonishing leap of faith and narrative power, they didn't just perceive a future, they began to invent it. Not a future of their own making, perhaps, but a future nonetheless, laid out by an omnipotent hand, stretching forward with a purpose that dwarfed all earthly cycles. It was the genesis of a concept so fundamental to our modern world, we can barely comprehend its absence. And yet, across the vibrant sun-drenched shores of the Aegean, another astonishing intellectual revolution was brewing, one that paradoxically both echoed and profoundly challenged this divinely ordained linearity. While prophets unveiled a fated future, the minds of ancient Greece, in their magnificent stoa and academies, began a bewildering, unprecedented task: to dissect time itself. Imagine for a moment the sheer audacity. They weren't just observing the sunrise and sunset.
the turning of seasons, or the rise and fall of empires. They were grappling with the very fabric of existence, daring to ask, what is time? It's easy to assume the Greeks were trapped in the cyclical worldview of their agricultural forebears. And indeed, many philosophical traditions, like those influenced by Pythagorean thought, or the Stoics with their doctrine of eternal recurrence, did speak of grand cosmic cycles where the universe itself would be consumed by fire, only to be reborn in an identical fashion, repeating every event precisely as before. It's a notion that makes one's head spin. Every triumph, every heartbreak, every word you utter fated to unfold infinitely, an endless cosmic replay. But even within this immense, repeating canvas, something extraordinary began to shift. Thinkers like Heraclitus famously declared, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he's not the same man." This wasn't just about change, it was an acknowledgement of an irreversible, forward-moving quality to experience. The moment itself was fleeting, unique, pushing us into an unknown new instant. This bewildered gaze upon the ephemeral present, this understanding of constant flux, was a crucial departure. Plato, in his towering intellect, wrestled with time as the moving image of eternity. For him, true reality lay in eternal, unchanging forms, and time was merely a reflection, a distorted copy, flowing within the sensible world. Yet this very distinction, this attempt to define time against an eternal backdrop, elevated it beyond simple repetition. It became a measurable dimension, a sequence, albeit one tied to the movements of celestial bodies. His cosmos, with its perfect, predictable orbits, still hinted at recurrence, but his analysis of time's nature, its relationship to causation and change, pushed the boundaries of thought. Then came Aristotle, the grand systematizer, who brought time down from the heavens and grounded it firmly in human experience. For him, time was inextricably linked to change and motion. It wasn't a separate entity, but rather the number of motion with respect to before and after. This was a phenomenal conceptual leap. Time was not a thing, but a measure. It allowed for the arrangement of events in an irreversible sequence, distinguishing between past, present, and future not just as points in a cycle, but as a directionality. He meticulously explored potentiality and actuality, implying a journey from one state to another, a progression. While they didn't invent progress in the modern sense, these Greek philosophers laid the intellectual scaffolding for understanding time as something more than just a cosmic treadmill. Their debates, their diagrams of the heavens, their logical distinctions between cause and effect, between potential and actual, subtly yet profoundly chipped away at the notion of absolute, unthinking recurrence. They began to ask if events truly must repeat, or if there was an inherent uniqueness to each unfolding moment. Their discussions, echoing through the colonnades, introduced the astonishing idea that perhaps humanity wasn't merely a passive observer in an endless cosmic play, but an active participant, capable of observing, analyzing, and even predicting the unfolding of events. The future, in this nascent understanding, wasn't just divinely fated. It was also a consequence of observable patterns, of cause and effect, of a reasoned unfolding. It was a different kind of invention of the future, perhaps less about divine decree and more about intellectual dissection, a future not given but deduced.
And in this bewildered, awestruck examination of time's very nature, humanity took another monumental, if less dramatic, step toward shaping its own temporal destiny. They didn't just believe in a future. They began to think about it rigorously, logically, setting the stage for centuries of further inquiry. From the philosophical halls where time was dissected and debated, the world tilted on its axis, quite literally, as Europe awakened from a long slumber. If the Greeks peered into time's nature with reasoned inquiry, the Renaissance, with a burst of audacious human agency, began to reshape it. This wasn't merely understanding, it was an active intervention, an utterly bewildering explosion of creation that dared to suggest we can build a better tomorrow. Imagine the sheer audacity. For millennia, humanity largely accepted its lot, bound by cycles, fate, or divine will. But now, in bustling workshops and illuminated studies, an entirely new philosophy germinated. It was the belief that human ingenuity, human effort, could bend the arc of existence. It sounds almost impossibly arrogant to our modern ears, but to them it was a revelation. Suddenly, the world wasn't just to be observed, it was to be mapped. Voyages of discovery stretched the known world into unimagined dimensions, revealing continents unseen, peoples unknown. The humble compass and the sophisticated astrolabe weren't just tools. They were keys unlocking a geographical future, expanding human reach and ambition beyond anything previously conceived. And what about information? Before this era, knowledge was guarded, laboriously copied by hand, a precious, fragile commodity. Then, almost overnight, the printing press roared to life. Imagine the shock. Suddenly, ideas, maps, scientific treatises, religious texts, they weren't whispered, they were mass-produced, spreading like wildfire. This wasn't just about sharing. It was about democratizing knowledge, empowering minds to build upon previous thought at an unprecedented pace. The future, in this light, was no longer a secret kept by a select few. It was a collaborative project. Look at the artists. They weren't content to merely illustrate dogma. With revolutionary techniques like linear perspective, they crafted realities on canvas, creating depth and dimension where flat representations once reigned. They didn't just depict the world, they reimagined it, demonstrating the power of human vision to construct new forms, new understandings. This mastery over visual space subtly but profoundly implied a mastery over possibilities. In the realm of the body and cosmos, the same daring spirit prevailed. Anatomists with scalpel in hand meticulously charted the inner workings of the human form, challenging ancient authorities. Astronomers with improved instruments dared to question the geocentric universe, placing the sun, not the earth, at the center of the cosmos. This wasn't just about scientific accuracy, it was a profound declaration that established truths could be re-examined, that new models could be built. The future was not predetermined by ancient texts or divine pronouncements, but discoverable through observation and reason. This era, the Renaissance,
wasn't just a rebirth of classical ideas. It was the birth of a future-oriented mindset. It was the moment humanity truly began to believe in progress, in the power of invention, in the capacity to transcend existing limitations. The sheer volume of breakthroughs, the explosion of new technologies, the expanding horizons of discovery, it was an overwhelming testament to a new, audacious belief that tomorrow didn't have to be like today, and indeed could be far, far better. The seeds of progress were sown not in prophecies or cosmic cycles, but in the inventive, striving spirit of humanity itself, forever altering our relationship with the unfolding tapestry of time.
If the Renaissance was humanity daring to dream of a better tomorrow, the Enlightenment was when we boldly declared we could engineer it. It wasn't just optimism. It was an almost breathtaking conviction that through the sheer power of human reason, we could dismantle ignorance, unravel the universe's secrets, and build a perfect society. Imagine the sheer audacity. For millennia, the future was largely left to fate, gods, or cyclical patterns. Now, suddenly an entire intellectual movement believed we could predict it, control it, even design it, simply by thinking hard enough. It's almost laughable in its ambition, yet profoundly influential. This era, often called the Age of Reason, saw minds like Isaac Newton, whose laws of motion and gravity revealed a universe governed by elegant, predictable mathematical principles. If the cosmos operated like a grand, intricate clockwork, then surely our societies could too. This wasn't merely science, it was a philosophical revelation, implying that hidden, universal laws governed everything, waiting to be discovered. The future wasn't just open, it was, in a sense, calculable. Suddenly, the human mind itself became the ultimate tool. Philosophers, rather than just observing, began to construct ideal societies on paper. John Locke articulated natural rights. Rousseau envisioned a social contract. Voltaire championed reason and tolerance.
These weren't idle musings. They were blueprints for a rational, improved future, meant to replace the chaotic traditional past. It's astonishing to consider the sheer belief they had in their own intellect to reshape entire civilizations. Knowledge wasn't just to be collected, it was to be systematized. Denis Diderot's monumental encyclopedia was a staggering attempt to gather all human knowledge, from philosophy to practical crafts, and organize it rationally. It was an intellectual arsenal, designed to disseminate reason and dismantle superstition, building blocks for a future enlightened by facts. Imagine the sheer undertaking, the audacious faith that categorizing everything would lead to collective improvement. These revolutionary ideas weren't confined to dusty academic studies. They exploded into vibrant salons and bustling coffee houses across Europe. Women played a critical role, hosting these intellectual forums where thinkers debated, disseminated, and refined their visions of a rational, progressive future. The very act of public discourse became a crucible for shaping tomorrow, a shared project of intellectual advancement. The future was being talked into existence, piece by astonishing piece. Governments, too, began to grasp these concepts.
Enlightened despots like Catherine the Great and Frederick the Great, influenced by these philosophies, attempted to implement reforms, from legal codes to educational systems, all with the explicit aim of improving their states through rational governance.
The idea that leaders could and should actively plan and manage the future of their nations was truly revolutionary. It was a conscious, top-down attempt to steer society towards a predetermined, better tomorrow. But it wasn't merely grand theories and royal decrees. The Enlightenment fostered an insatiable curiosity about the natural world, leading to an explosion of empirical observation and scientific discovery. Botanists painstakingly classified plants, chemists unraveled elements. Early economists sought predictable laws governing markets. Every new discovery, every piece of classified data, reinforced the belief that the universe was understandable and therefore manipulatable for human benefit. The future wasn't just happening, it was being uncovered and optimized. The very concept of progress transformed from a vague hope into an almost scientific certainty. It was believed that with enough reason, enough data, humanity was on an unstoppable march towards a perfectible future. Poverty, ignorance, tyranny, all were seen as problems solvable by the application of enlightened thought. It was a radical, perhaps even hubristic vision. We were no longer passively awaiting fate, we were actively constructing destiny. The Enlightenment cemented the idea that the future isn't just something that happens to us, but something we make. It was the ultimate statement of human agency, a belief that still resonates and perhaps still bewilders us today. How utterly astonishing that a collection of minds could so profoundly alter our perception of time and our role within it. If the Enlightenment theorized a future engineered by reason, the Industrial Revolution built it, piece by astonishing, smoke-belching piece. Suddenly, the abstract became terrifyingly, magnificently real. The future wasn't just a philosophical concept. It was a roaring furnace, a clattering loom, a relentless locomotive hurtling humanity forward at an unprecedented, dizzying speed. It's almost impossible to grasp the sheer seismic shift that occurred. A world transformed, not by divine decree, but by human ingenuity, harnessing raw power to reshape the very fabric of existence. Imagine, if you can, the sudden appearance of these gargantuan structures, factories rising like unnatural mountains, their towering smokestacks ceaselessly exhaling the breath of progress into the sky. What a spectacle of human will! These were not mere workshops, they were temples to efficiency, where raw materials were fed in one end and a torrent of goods flowed from the other, redefining abundance itself. The clatter and roar, the constant hum of machinery, it was the sound of tomorrow being hammered into shape. And what fueled this astonishing transformation? The steam engine. This incredible invention, a marvel of brass and iron, pulsed with an almost sentient energy, driving everything from textile mills to coal mines. It was the mechanical heart of a new age, a true testament to humanity's audacious claim to master nature. This wasn't just an improvement, it was a revolution in power, capable of doing the work of hundreds, even thousands of hands. It truly beggars belief what our ancestors achieved with such novel technologies. The consequence? Cities exploded. People flocked from agrarian fields to industrial hubs, drawn by the siren song of labor and the promise of a modern life.
This was visible, tangible proof of humanity's new trajectory, a world quite literally under construction, evolving before their very eyes at a rate that must have been utterly disorienting. Transportation, too, was utterly revolutionized. Railways, iron veins stretching across continents, began to connect distant places, shrinking the world and accelerating the flow of goods, ideas, and people. The sight of a steam locomotive, a monstrous iron beast breathing fire and smoke, thundering through the countryside, must have evoked both terror and profound wonder. It wasn't just faster travel, it was a physical manifestation of an ever-accelerating future, constantly moving, relentlessly pushing onward. This was more than just technological advancement. It was the birth of a new philosophy of continuous growth. The future was seen as an endless upward curve, driven by innovation, production, and consumption. Every new invention, every new factory, every new mile of railway line was another brick in the edifice of a perpetually improving tomorrow. Every new factory, every new mile of railway line was another brick in the edifice of a perpetually improving tomorrow. It fostered an almost boundless optimism, a profound belief in humanity's capacity to overcome any limitation, to conquer scarcity, and to engineer a future of unprecedented material comfort. The sheer audacity of this belief is truly breathtaking. It's a vision that, for better or worse, still powerfully shapes our modern world. A colossal legacy of an era when humanity invented the future with iron and fire. The relentless march of industrial progress, with its promise of endless improvement, birthed something truly extraordinary. The grand, audacious ambition to design the future itself. If the 19th century built it, the 20th century dared to draw it, to map out entire worlds yet to be, both glorious and terrifying. Humanity, having mastered the forces of nature, now believed it could master society. Suddenly, we weren't just reacting to the future, we were sculpting it, meticulously planning every street, every building, every human interaction. Architects, thinkers, and idealists dreamed of gleaming cities, perfectly ordered, bathed in light, where every social ill would be solved by rational design. The early 20th century saw the rise of the Garden City movement, envisioning harmonious communities nestled within green belts, promoting health, happiness, and collective well-being. Urban planners like Ebenezer Howard sought to blend the best of city and country, creating a balanced, equitable future for all. This was a magnificent, almost utopian belief in the perfectibility of man through environment. Then came the grand modernist visions, Le Corbusier's Ville radieuse, or radiant city, proposing towering residential blocks surrounded by vast parks, all laid out on a grid of unparalleled efficiency. Every element, from transportation to housing, was optimized for a flawless, functional existence. It was a spectacular declaration. Reason, applied with unwavering confidence, could engineer a better tomorrow. This was the future as a benevolent machine, humming with progress, designed to elevate humanity. But every grand vision casts an equally deep shadow. The very same tools of organization, the same industrial might, the same belief in rational control that promised a flawless future
also held the chilling potential for unprecedented oppression. The dream could curdle into a nightmare. The 20th century, scarred by 2 world wars, the Great Depression, and the rise of totalitarian regimes, saw the horrifying counter-narrative of dystopia emerge with terrifying clarity. What if efficiency became dehumanizing? What if order became absolute surveillance? What if the collective good crushed individual liberty? Suddenly, the towering structures weren't just efficient. They were cold, alienating, designed to watch. The rational planning mutated into rigid, soul-crushing conformity. The gleaming towers of Utopia transformed into the brutalist fortresses of control. The endless rows of identical homes becoming symbols of uniformity, not harmony. Writers like H.G. Wells, Yevgeny Zamyatin, Aldous Huxley, and George Orwell began to articulate these profound anxieties, painting grim pictures of futures where technology, bureaucracy, and unchecked power led not to liberation, but to enslavement of the human spirit. Their warnings, steeped in the realities of their time, forced humanity to confront the terrifying possibility that the future it invented could just as easily imprison as it could liberate. This era grappled with 2 profoundly different, yet equally powerful visions of tomorrow, both born from the same wellspring of human ingenuity. A breathtaking dichotomy, the future as heaven on earth, or the future as a meticulously engineered hell. It left humanity suspended between 2 poles, a tension that still defines our understanding of what lies ahead. A stark reminder that while we can invent the future, we must also decide what kind of future we truly desire. And so, after millennia of simply experiencing time, humanity did something truly extraordinary. We invented the future. We sculpted it from foresight, ambition, and the dazzling tools of science and technology. We learned not just to anticipate tomorrow, but to engineer it. But with this godlike power came a weight, a burden of responsibility so profound it would have been unimaginable to our ancestors. Consider the climate, the very breath of our planet, now irrevocably altered by our ceaseless quest for progress. Vast glaciers, ancient and eternal, are melting at an alarming rate, their silent retreat a stark testament to the future we have unwittingly, or perhaps knowingly, forged. Rising seas threaten to reclaim coastal cities, monuments to human ingenuity now vulnerable to the very changes we wrought. The earth groans under the weight of our industry, our consumption, our dreams. Forests burn with unprecedented fury. Once lush lands now wither into dust. This isn't just nature's whim. It is the consequence of our collective future-making, a future where we are no longer passive observers, but active participants in the planet's destiny. Then there is the bewildering dawn of artificial intelligence, a future so powerful, so utterly alien that it stirs both exhilarating promise and deep-seated existential dread. We stand on the precipice of creating true consciousness, or something profoundly akin to it, born from silicon and code. What are the ethical implications of machines that think, feel, or even surpass human intellect? Will they be our partners, our saviors, or perhaps our ultimate successors? The singularity looms, a theoretical point of no return where technological growth becomes uncontrollable and irreversible, fundamentally altering human civilization. The very concept challenges our understanding of what it means to be human, what it means to be alive. We are building our own gods, or perhaps our own ultimate children, and the future they will inherit and perhaps create is utterly unknown. Beyond the grand narratives of climate and consciousness, a myriad of ethical dilemmas blossom from our technological harvest. Genetic engineering promises to eradicate disease, to perfect humanity itself. But where does perfection end and playing God begin? Who decides what traits are desirable and what risks are acceptable? Digital surveillance, the constant observation of our lives, offers security, but at what cost to privacy, to individual liberty? The very fabric of society, of human connection, is being rewoven by algorithms and data, shaping our thoughts, our choices, our very reality. We chase immortality. We seek to defy death itself, believing we can cheat nature's oldest decree. This, then, is the paradox of our invented future. We possess the unprecedented ability to shape it, yet we are simultaneously overwhelmed by its implications.
We gaze into the horizon, not with the simple hope of a farmer praying for rain, but with a complex cocktail of ambition, anxiety, and an almost unbearable sense of responsibility. For the first time in history, we truly own tomorrow, with all its dazzling possibilities and its terrifying pitfalls. The question that echoes through every innovation, every policy, every choice we make now is not merely what will the future bring, but rather, what future will we bring? And can we, mere mortals, truly bear the immense weight of the future we have dared to invent? From the ashes of utopian dreams and dystopian fears, a new, almost unbelievably ambitious chapter began to unfold. If the 20th century drew the future, the 21st century started to code it, to build a grand, intricate operating system designed not just to predict, but to orchestrate tomorrow. We stand at a precipice where the future is no longer a distant horizon we merely contemplate, but a vast, complex machine we are actively attempting to design, engineer, and control. The sheer audacity of this undertaking is breathtaking. Gone are the days of philosophers pondering the cosmos. Now, armies of futurists, economists, data scientists, and policymakers huddle over screens, bathed in the glow of data visualizations. They are the new oracles, but their prophecies aren't etched in stone. They are algorithms crunching trillions of data points, mapping probabilities, simulating outcomes, attempting to chart every possible path the human race might take. We are literally building digital twins of tomorrow, trying to game theory our way out of every potential catastrophe. Consider the global challenges: climate change, pandemics, and economic instability. How do we respond? Not with abstract ideals alone, but with sophisticated climate models predicting sea level rise decade by decade, with epidemiological simulations forecasting virus city by city, with economic algorithms attempting to stabilize entire markets. We're talking about vast, interconnected networks of expertise, attempting to mitigate risks and maximize prosperity on a planetary scale. It's an almost godlike endeavor, this attempt to steer the future of 7 billion souls, intertwined in a global ecosystem. Urban planners no longer sketching garden cities on paper, now deploy AI-driven traffic management systems, smart grids, and predictive analytics to optimize everything from energy consumption to public safety. International bodies convene not just to react to crises, but to proactively forge treaties and policies based on long-range forecasts for demographics, resource allocation, and technological disruption. Entire governments now employ chief futurists or foresight units, institutionalizing the once fringe idea that we can and must systematically plan for decades, even centuries ahead. It's an astonishing transformation from merely imagining a better tomorrow to actively manufacturing it. This isn't just progress, it's a profound declaration of human agency, a collective leap of faith into a future that is, in essence, becoming a colossal self-fulfilling prophecy.